Hello, Boulder Bookstore. I am Mary Dixie Carter, the author of The Photographer, my debut novel, which will be out in paperback on August 16th. Boulder Bookstore sent me a few questions, and I'll start off with a brief synopsis of The Photographer. Delta Dawn is the photographer. She's also the first person narrator, and she takes pictures of wealthy New Yorkers and their children. And at the opening of the book, she goes to the home of Amelia and Fritz Straub to photograph their daughter's 11th birthday party. And she falls in love with the family and she becomes obsessed with the family. And the book is the story of her trying to insinuate herself into this particular family. I got the idea for the book when I hired a photographer myself to take pictures of my two children. This was a few years back, and the pictures came back and they were really beautiful, but the children's eyes in the photos were cobalt blue, and they're not in real life. And I said to the photographer, I'd like for the children's eyes to be their real color. And she said, there is no real color. And I was so struck by that point of view. So I wrote a book from that point of view. So Delta Dawn believes there is no real color, there is no real anything, and she can make the world what she wants it to be and what she thinks it ought to be. Another question from Boulder Bookstore is, did you do any research on photography while writing the book? The answer is yes, I did quite a bit of research. I took a photography class. I also took a class in Photoshop. I am not a photographer myself, though I really do appreciate photography, and I'm in awe of wonderful photographers. So in the class that I took on photography, I learned enough vocabulary that I felt reasonably confident that I could sound like a real photographer. That was my goal. I didn't learn to be a great photographer, but I did learn some vocabulary. And I also then, I sent the book when I had a full draft, I sent it to a couple of friends who are photographers and asked them to look over certain sections and make sure that it sounded credible. So the next question is, did you know everything about your main character, Delta, before you started writing, or did you write the story to figure out who she was? And the latter is definitely the case. I wrote the story to figure out who she was, and I discovered it along the way. And I almost, like, I just put blinders on. I got into this woman's head in an almost like claustrophobic way, and I did not impose anything on the character. I really allowed her to dictate where the story went and what happened, and I allowed her voice to drive it. And for this particular novel, I think it was the right way to go. The next question has to do with writing process, which is sort of related to this, which is about in that I didn't decide the plot ahead of time. I didn't decide much about the story at all. I was wanting to explore this woman's mind and how she was thinking about the world and how she came to make the decisions that she made, and figure out who she was by just kind of listening to her. I am an actor. I was a professional actor when I got out of college for some years, and I kind of approach acting and writing the same way, really getting into the character's body and mind, and like allowing that to sort of lead what the character does and what the character wants, and sort of finding that in my body. And that's what I did in writing this. I was very much like in Delta's body while I was writing it, the same way I would be if I were playing the character in a play. So another thing about my writing process, this particular book took 3 years to write, but I had no deadline. I was just writing it, hoping someone would want to publish it. So, it was very different than writing a novel now, which I am doing, but very different, set of expectations. So they're both interesting and terrific in different ways. And the 3 years in which I wrote The Photographer, that is not counting the whole publishing process. And also the idea came to me a couple years earlier than that. And I jotted down maybe 5 pages about this photographer and this family. And I was working on something else at the time. And so then when I put that other project aside and I went back to my computer and looked through different documents on my computer, I saw this and I was like, this is the novel that I'm still really, really interested in writing. So I dove into it and here I am. Is there anything else you want us to know about your book? I guess something that I'd like for you to know about my book is that I identify with Delta Dawn just a little bit. And I hope that the readers do maybe a tiny bit, just in one respect, which is that Delta's an outsider. She feels like an outsider. She feels like she doesn't belong and wants to be a part of something and considers herself someone who's on the outside looking in. And I think everyone feels like that sometimes. And so that is the way in which, and I have felt like that in the past at certain times in my life. And so I hope that though a lot of her behavior is horrifying, that maybe readers will find something that they understand about her, and that her behavior comes out of some kind of desperation or loneliness. One more question is, what have you been reading during the pandemic to stay hopeful? I just finished reading The Missing Hours by Julia Dahl. I did not read it to stay hopeful, but it's an amazing book and I highly recommend it. It's very distressing and provocative, but it's riveting. And it's hopeful in that it's so well written, and reading something that's excellent, I think, is always hopeful for me. Then lastly, can you read us a short passage from your book? And the answer is yes, I will be happy to. This is the hardcover of The Photographer. The paperback comes out August 16th, and I don't have a copy or I would be holding that up. So here we go. The passage I'm going to read is Delta's babysitting for Natalie, Amelia and Fritz's daughter. They're out for the evening. Natalie's asleep. So babysitting is one of many ways in which she's finding to kind of make herself necessary and important to this family. At this particular moment, she's checking out the house. Since Natalie's asleep, she's taking the opportunity to look around. And here she is in Amelia and Fritz's bathroom. When finished at the mirror, I turned to take in the magnificence of the bathtub. I'd never bathed in such a tub. I considered how much time I had. It was 10 p.m. The Straubs definitely wouldn't return home before 11, and Amelia had indicated it would be later. If I were to take a bath, I'd have at least an hour before I'd have to worry about their arrival. I pulled my shirt over my head, removed my bra, and examined my torso in the full-length mirror. I still had a flat stomach and a slender waist. I thought about conceiving and bearing a child. Childbirth can alter a woman's body, sometimes permanently. I sat down on an Indonesian stool and pulled off my socks, my jeans, and my underwear, then stood naked in the lavish bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror, savoring a sense of connection and intimacy with the Straubs, and also the power associated with claiming what I needed. I considered the logistics of my bath. I ought not to use a towel for my bath because I might not have time to wash and dry it. They would likely notice a damp towel or a damp tub. Maybe I needed to wait for my next visit and bring my own towel. The thought of postponing the bath brought my spirits down. Still undecided, I returned to the bedroom to study the Straub's bed. A dozen pillows of various sizes and fabrics and in various shades of blue covered the upholstered headboard. I wanted to lie naked under their organic cotton sheets. Thoughts of Amelia and Fritz having sex entered my mind. Natalie's face appeared in the doorway. Her body lurched back at the sight of me. "Hi, Natalie." I spoke in a calm tone, though a wave of panic ran through me. I spotted a throat draped over a nearby chair. The craziest thing. I wrapped the blanket tightly around my body. Just a few minutes ago, Itzhak vomited. I was downstairs and lifting him off the porch. Awful for him, really. I avoided her eye contact. So all my clothes, I had to clean everything. It was quite a mess, and I'm going to wash my clothes in the machine. I'll just find a towel until they're dry. Poor Itzhak. Natalie crossed toward me in the direction of the bathroom. I feared she was going to examine my clothing to see if I was telling the truth about the vomit, but she stopped in front of one of her parents' nightstands to check the time. She turned around and walked back toward the bedroom door. Fortunately, she returned to bed rather quickly after a glass of milk. I was mildly concerned about how she would relate what she saw. She appeared to believe me when I explained about Itzhak, but I couldn't be certain. Still wrapped in the blanket, I went back to the master bathroom where I'd left my clothes and sent Amelia a text. "Can I use the laundry machine to wash my clothes? Unfortunately, Itzhak's been ill." "No, did he ruin your clothes?" "I'm fine. Please use my bathroom to rinse off." The response allayed all my fears and filled me with the same sense of euphoria that I'd had earlier. I placed my clean clothes in the laundry machine with detergent. Then when I entered the master bathroom again, it was not as a trespasser, but as an invited guest. That's the end of that scene, or the portion that I'm going to read. And once again, thank you to Boulder Bookstore. Thank you so much.